All right, now that we've covered epithelial tissue and connective tissue, let's talk about muscles. So a muscle, it's tissue in your body, and it can contract and relax. It has to be doing one of these two things. And what contraction means is when those muscle fibers shorten. So I have my bicep here. It is connected, that muscle is connected at my shoulder and at my elbow. That's on top. And when it contracts, it's going to shorten. And as it shortens, it pulls my forearm towards my body. And when my tricep contracts, because right now it's long, it's relaxed. But if I contract my tricep and relax my bicep, then my tricep is going to contract and shorten and pull my forearm back out. So muscles contract and muscles relax. Muscles know when to contract because your brain and your spinal cord tells them when to do that. That signal is able to get from your brain and your spinal cord out to the muscle via your nerves. So you can think of your nerves as essentially the wires that run from your nervous system out to your muscles. Diameter related to strength. What that means here is the bigger around your muscle, the stronger your muscle is. And that makes sense if you think about what a muscle is. It's fibers contracting and pulling. The bigger those fibers are, the stronger they're going to pull. Muscles also have a vascular supply for nutrient and oxygen needs. Vascular meaning blood flow. So your muscles receive nutrients from your circulatory system, from the blood, to stay alive and functioning. Okay, so now we're going to talk about an important concept called origin and insertion. We're going to start very black and white with this, but as we move through the semester, you'll come to understand that oftentimes muscles are more complex than we're talking about them right at this moment in time. But to get into that material, let's start with a very simple muscle. We're going to stay with the bicep. As I already said, my bicep is connected to my shoulder and it's connected to my elbow. So my bicep has two ends to it. So there's my bicep, and then there's a tendon connecting it to my shoulder, and there's a tendon connecting it to my elbow. Origin and insertion refers to different parts of a muscle. The origin of the muscle is that part of the muscle that is attached to the thing that moves the least when it contracts. The insertion of the muscle is that part of the muscle that is attached to the thing that moves the most when the muscle contracts. So if we take my bicep contracts. So one end of my bicep is attached to something that is moving a lot. One end of my bicep is attached to something that isn't moving at all. The origin of the muscle is that end of the muscle that is attached to the thing that is moving the least. So in short, you would say the origin of the bicep is at the shoulder and the insertion of the bicep is at the elbow. We think of muscles as being in three different categories. Agonists, these are muscles that work to move a body part. Antagonists, these are muscles that oppose movement. and synergist, and these are muscles that work to stabilize things. Okay, so in this case, your bicep is the agonist. The muscle that is an antagonist to the bicep is the tricep. It does the exact opposite. So we would say they're an antagonist pair. As I'm sitting here talking, I'm not thinking about it, but there are muscles all in my abdomen and my back and in my thorax that are contracting, that are keeping my body upright, that's stabilizing me as I sit here. We call those guys synergists. And as I already have mentioned, our muscles receive electric stimulation. This is the signal from our nervous system that tells it how to move, when to contract. Our muscles receive this signal along a nerve. And here's a couple of new words, afferent and efferent. And these are words that I use a lot in my classes. Afferent signals, these are signals going from your body up to your brain for processing. So sensation is what we're talking about. So when I'm seeing things, I have cells in the back of my eye that are being stimulated by light, and they are sending a signal along a nerve up to my brain. When I feel something in my hand, so if I feel that, I have cells in my hand that activate and generate an electrical signal and send that signal from my hand up to my brain for processing. So afferent signals are from the body to the brain, and we usually think of them as being sensory. Efferent signals are from the brain out to the body, and these are motor signals. These are signals from your brain coming down to your muscles, telling your muscles how to move. I mentioned functional unit of a muscle when I was talking about fascia in the last group of slides. When you have one nerve fiber within that bundle that is surrounded by the fascia, each nerve fiber is going to have a little wire, has a little nerve going to it that tells it what to do. That little nerve and the muscle fibers that it innervates, we call that a motor unit. Innervated means basically the nerve supply to the structure. And there are plenty of diseases of the motor unit where you have a breakdown of the motor unit. It could be a breakdown of the nerve itself, a degeneration of the nerve itself that is running to the muscle, and that is in the case of amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS. And there's also diseases where the actual connection between the nerve and the muscle itself is degraded. All right, so you have three categories of muscles, three types of muscles. Striated muscle, this is your skeletal muscle. This is the muscle that moves your body. You have smooth muscle. This is the muscles of your digestive tract. Smooth muscle is under autonomic control, involuntary control. So you don't have any conscious control over your smooth muscles. Skeletal muscles are under your voluntary control. They're not autonomic. Cardiac muscle, this is your heart muscle, and it is largely under autonomic control. You can't choose to stop your heart beating. We're going to spend a lot of time on nervous tissue towards the end of this class, so I'm not going to get into it now, but I am going to mention that when people mention nervous tissue, largely what they're talking about are neurons. And the neuron is the cell in the nervous system that is responsible for transmitting information. It's responsible for transmitting that electrical signal from your brain out to your muscles, and it's responsible for transmitting that electrical signal from your body up to your brain. The last tissue type we're going to talk about before we sort of wrap up this general intro section is your vascular tissue. When we say vascular tissue, we're talking about your blood. So your vascular tissue, as I've already mentioned, carries nutrition from your digestive system out to your cells. It carries oxygen from your respiratory system out to your cells. It carries cellular waste from your cells to be disposed of in the kidneys. It carries respiratory waste from your cells, meaning the carbon dioxide that you need to get rid of, carries that from your cells back to your lungs to be dumped into the air that you exhale. And the vascular system is important for defending the body against pathogens, microorganisms, bacteria, virus, things like that. When you think of blood cells, think of three main ones. You have your red blood cells, your white blood cells, and your platelets. Your red blood cells, we're going to come back to these at some point. This is the part of your blood that picks up oxygen at the lungs, carries that oxygen out to the cells, hands off the oxygen, picks up the carbon dioxide, and then carries the carbon dioxide back to the lungs for that carbon dioxide to be dumped back into the air that you exhale. That's the action of the red blood cells. The white blood cells, these are our infection control guys. And our platelets, this is the part of the blood that is responsible for clotting. And clotting is very important, as you guys probably already know. It's what, when you cut yourself, it's what allows you to stop bleeding. There are certain conditions where your body is unable to, where your blood is unable to clot. And those are life-threatening conditions because you could bleed to death from a very small wound.